Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Erin Pappas. We're in Bend, Oregon, and we've just had an awesome couple days hanging out with Erin here. Erin, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dan.
So we, like many of my other guests, we met via social media first through our connection with baseball, and me being a proponent of women's baseball and kind of connecting to a lot of you guys who participated in the Red Sox Fantasy Camp years and years ago. And we've just stayed in touch, and you came down to visit me at our complex in Reading, Pennsylvania back in 2018. And, when you heard that Sandy and I were selling our stuff and going to be living in an RV, you said, if you get out to Oregon, look me up. And we did, and here we are.
Yeah.
So, but that's minor stuff that I want to talk to you about. I mean, you in addition to being a female baseball player, you're an avid hiker. And when I say avid hiker, I mean avid, like, just hiked Kilimanjaro in Africa.
Yep.
So we're not talking just going out for a stroll every once in a while. And you took us on a couple, I'm sure what were strolls for you this weekend, but were good hikes for us. So let's talk baseball first.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about your story as to how you came to fall in love with the game of baseball, for starters.
Well, my dad is really the one who instilled the love of baseball in me. From the time I was a child, he was a huge Red Sox fan. And it's funny because my grandfather and my uncle were huge Yankees fans. So it was always this like inter-family rivalry. And actually it's kind of funny because my uncle would send me like a Yankees keychain or like a personalized Yankees hat, just things like that to kind of egg me on when I was a kid. I started playing when I was young and grew up in Canada, where the system is very different than Little League is here. And you play t-ball until you're like 10. And I really feel that gives kids a good grasp of the game. Ball's always going into play. Kids are having to make plays. They learn the game so much better. But I got picked up for a provincial development team, basically, when I was 6. And so that's all I did. I lived and breathed and ate baseball, basically, t-ball. And then when I was 10, the girls would go into softball and the boys would go play baseball. And I was like, no, I don't want to play softball. I want to play baseball. So I was actually the first girl in my town in Milton to ever play Little League baseball. Did that for 2 years. Always made the all-star team. I was pitcher, shortstop, always one of the best ones on the field. And when I was 13, we moved back down to the States, and I got forced into playing softball. And then my playing career actually got cut short because I went into foster care. So wasn't able to play after that.
Yeah.
And then coached my son, did the Red Sox Fantasy Camp, got invited to go and try out for the U.S. Women's National Team. And I just play in the town leagues now. And I'm usually the only female that plays in the town leagues. So.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your tryout with the national team. We talked about that, prior to recording a little bit today. And, you said that you felt, you were one of the older women there.
Mm-hmm.
You felt an obligation almost to tell some of these younger girls to really embrace the opportunity they had. Why did you think that was important to pass that message on to them?
Because opportunities like that didn't exist when I was their age. I definitely felt like the old lady on the field. Half of those girls were like my daughter's age at the time, and I was like, oh, this age-old woman giving advice here. Back in my day, they didn't even have girls playing baseball. But yeah, just the opportunities that there are for girls to play baseball and for girls to play baseball in college even. You're starting to see so much more of that. Like, those opportunities didn't exist when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and talking about that, girls, playing in college. A few months ago, I did a podcast with Beth Greenwood, who you actually introduced me to when you came down to the complex. And, she has such an incredible head on her shoulders.
Yes.
So like a little trip like that where, you were just taking her and Jackie, out to Pittsburgh to participate in this camp. Again, why did you feel, it was important to kind of take them, both under your wing kind of, and, say, hey, let's go do this camp.
Yeah. Again, when somebody just has such the passion that I do for the sport, like I can't help but like want to help further their careers with it. The story with Beth is actually funny because we did a fantasy league, a fantasy team women's game against a men's team from Connecticut. They reached out and wanted to play some of us. And so Beth had come down, and I met her when she was like 17 years old, I think. And her mom was like, yeah, you can take her to Pittsburgh. She's, and even Jackie's parents, Jackie's parents trusted me enough to take Jackie. I drove Jackie down to the U.S. women's tryout when we went down to North Carolina, and to bring her out to Pittsburgh. So I consider that quite an honor, to be honest with you. So
that's very cool. And it seems like, so you were part of the very first Red Sox Fantasy Camp, correct?
The women's, yep.
Yeah. And it seems, like I said, I've connected with so many of you guys through social media, and there is like a true like family atmosphere to, especially all of you that were in that first camp, So I guess what was it like, to show up there and, see 80, 60.
I think there was 60. I think there were 60 women that first year.
So 59 other women that were baseball junkies like you.
So that is the very first time that I've ever experienced anything like that. My whole life growing up, I was the oddball out. I was the only girl playing on the teams. I was the only girl coaching for, my son and the kids in town. To be surrounded by women who have the same passion and the same like fever for baseball that I do was just an incredible experience for me.
Yeah. And do you think that was probably mutual for everyone, and that's why you guys all became so close so quickly?
Yeah, I do think so. And even the women who hadn't really played baseball before, but were just such fans of the team and such fans of the Red Sox, the support that has come out of that team, and getting to see even those women who had never really played before, how much they've grown in the 5 years now that the fantasy camp has been going on, is unbelievable. Like girls who couldn't even, field the ball cleanly, now they're like making double plays, and to see those women and see how far they've come in just a short amount of time, and even at the advanced ages that we're at now, it's just really incredible to me. And I love cheering them on, and I love seeing how everybody improves on a yearly basis.
Yeah. Like I said, I love interacting with you guys. Hopefully through our travels, I'll be able to personally connect with even more of them, because this has been a blast. But that was one of the very first things I picked up on, is that it was a pretty tight-knit group that
and we have so much enthusiasm. Like everybody is just cheering each other on, and it's contagious.
Yeah, that's cool. Any other baseball tidbits you want to talk about before we move on to our next topic?
Well, I'll tell you the story about my love for Carl Yastrzemski. My dad had a movie that came out in the late 80s called Yaz, and where most kids will watch a movie, like a cartoon movie, over and over again and be able to recite it, I would watch this baseball movie over and over and over again, and that's really part of what stimulated my love of the game. And he still remains my all-time favorite player. I wore number 8 growing up my whole life because of him. I wear number 8 every chance I can now. So
That's cool.
Yeah.
Just one more question on that. So as you were going through there, and a lot of times being the only girl on the team, how important was it? You said you got the love of the game from your father. How important was it to have his support while you were the only girl out there in the field?
I think that definitely helped. Also helps that I'm pretty stubborn and independent, so don't really care what everybody else thinks of me as long as I go out and I do my best and try to bring it every time I'm out on the field. And I try to bring that same spirit to everything that I do. Like when I go to work, I go there and I try to do the best that I can do. When I'm here with my kids, I try to do the best that I can with them. Yeah,
Cool.
but my dad would be like the only person on the sidelines most of the time to watch my games.
Yeah.
And that did mean a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So let's talk a little bit about hiking and your love of the outdoors. How did that start?
My love of the outdoors has been ever since I was a child. I was one of those kids who was like, I'd eat breakfast and then be like, okay, I'm going out to play, and then wouldn't come back home until my rule was that when the street lights came on, I had to be home.
Right.
I'd jump on my bike and ride like 30 miles all through town throughout the day. My friends and I would go like pretty scrappy. We'd go collect bottles and, return them to buy candy. And a lot of, I guess how I actually got really, really good at baseball came from, I was always trying to play with the older boys in our, kind of lived in like a project-y neighborhood. And there was this one corner lot where we would all go play baseball, or 500 up. And I was always trying to keep up with the bigger kids and the bigger boys. And I wanted to show them that I could play just as good as they could. So I think it really came from that. I always had this love of the outdoors, but I didn't come from that outdoorsy of a family. Like the very first time I ever went camping was when I was 12, and it was because I was able to tag along with a church youth group, and
Right.
I didn't even really go to church, but I was like, I want to go camping, so I am willing to listen to whatever they want to preach to me so I can go on this trip.
Yeah. That's cool. So now, I mean, you're hiking quite a bit, and you just not even a month ago did Kilimanjaro. I mean, so back up a little bit to like what was the inspiration there? Was there like one single aha moment that, look, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it this year, and tell me the story of that.
It's one of those things that's always been just a little bit on the back burner. Like I had heard that people had climbed it and done it. I know it's the world's tallest freestanding mountain, so that really appealed to me. My plan for my 40th birthday this past summer was that I was going to bike across Scotland. I was going to bike all the way across the island of Scotland and stay in these castles along the way and drink whiskey at every turn. And unfortunately, COVID really killed all of those plans. And I knew that 40 was a big year for me. My youngest just graduated from high school. It was time for me to do something for myself. And so Kilimanjaro kind of popped up on my list again, and I was like, yep, that's what I'm going to do. So started hiking pretty intensely this past summer. Thankfully, I've got some really great friends at work that also share that love of the outdoors, and they really helped kind of prep me to be ready for Kilimanjaro.
Yeah. So what type of training did you do to get ready for that?
There's a few mountains here in Bend that are called the Sisters, and they have an elevation of around 10,000 feet. So I hiked those a few times. Went on a lot of backpacking trips with my friends where we'd do anywhere from shortest maybe 6 miles, but up to about 20 miles in a trip, and usually just over a day or two. I hiked the Timberline Trail, which goes around the base of Mount Hood, and it's like 44 miles altogether, trying to log like 25-mile days. doing that. So
it's cool.
yeah.
Was there any point in your training where you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this?
No.
None at all.
No.
That's awesome.
No, it was if I set my mind to something like that, I'm going to achieve it no matter what. And I think you have to have that kind of a mindset to climb Kilimanjaro. There were some other groups that weren't with me, but that were kind of climbing at the same time. And you could tell that there were like some couples where maybe the girlfriend got kind of dragged along to do it, and they wouldn't summit, because you have to have that mindset that like, I'm going to do this no matter what.
Yeah.
That's a big part of being able to reach the top.
Yeah. So then once you got there, and, got to Africa, you're preparing for it. What was the mindset like, the days leading up to it? Like, man, I am really about to do this.
So immediately before leaving, actually the morning that I was supposed to fly out, I had signed up for alerts through the State Department for that area. And I got an email at 3:30 in the morning on the morning that I was supposed to leave that said there had been a shooting outside of an embassy in Dar es Salaam and that they were advising Americans not to travel to Tanzania. And so I had like a couple hours of panic where I was like, okay, they're advising people not to travel. Like, should I go and do this? Am I putting myself in some kind of a danger? Like, I'm a single American female traveling by herself into, flying into Qatar and flying into a very Muslim country. And so I just had to be mindful of that. But I also just thought, I was like, you know what, with COVID and the way things are in the world right now, I don't know that I'll ever have a chance to do this again. And I just need to seize this opportunity and make the most of it.
Yeah.
So that was the day immediately going into it. I flew into Qatar, and that was even a little bit scary because the Taliban was in Qatar discussing like the trade-off of power for Afghanistan at the time. And so I was in the airport with a head covering and trying not to draw any attention to myself and like trying not to walk around a lot and just kind of stay low key, which if anybody knows me is sometimes a little bit hard. I have a tendency to draw attention to myself quite a bit. So yeah, even just the fact that I made it to Africa safe was like a huge weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't really anything that was going to stop me after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, first day of the hike, how many people were in the group for starters?
So there was only one other person doing the hike with me, and he is a dentist from Texas. He was originally supposed to do it with his wife, and they went on a hike when they were on a trip up in St. Lucia a few months before, and she was like, you know what? I really don't like hiking, and I really don't want to go on this trip with you. And so she made the decision, not to waste time and money and go out there, which was probably the best one. Like I said, you have to have that mindset that you're going to do it
right.
in order to be successful. So it was he and I, and then we had a team of like 8 porters and guides with us that were absolutely amazing. Took care of all the food, would set up a little tent for us to eat, carried a bunch of stuff. So that they were a great support too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, some of the elements you went through, if you can kind of, again, just stress to my listeners what the elevation change is and just, the whole process.
It's funny because you have to plan for every type of weather. You start off basically in the rainforest, and it's sunny and there's monkeys and it's really kind of neat. And then at the very top, after going through, I think there's 7 microclimates altogether that you go through. The night that we summited, you hike all through the night, and at 3 o'clock in the morning at the top of Kilimanjaro with the wind gusts, it was up to -20. So yeah, at that point I had on pretty much every article of clothing that I had packed with me in an attempt to stay warm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what was the feeling like when you got to the summit?
Just complete, elation. When we got up to the summit, it was right before sunrise, like right before. Thankfully, I didn't have to wait very long for the sun to come up because it was really cold up there. But getting to see sunrise from the top of Kilimanjaro, it's, other than the birth of my children and getting to pitch off the mound at Fenway Park, that's like the top experience of my life. So incredibly beautiful. Just, and the fact that I was able to make it to the summit to see that, and I just felt so proud of myself too at the time, just kind of enhanced the feeling, I guess. Yeah. Getting the picture with the sign and whatever, that wasn't really that big of a deal to me, but getting to see the sunrise was just magical.
Yeah.
And
at that point, was it like, everything I've worked for, this is what it was all about?
Yep. Yeah. And the guy that I was with, he actually had to fly back immediately after the hike. And with the rule changes with the COVID, we had to hike faster. So we ended up completing the hike 2 days faster than most people take that trail. And it's 37 miles and it's 17,000 feet of elevation gain total. And so we were able to do that in 5 days.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's absolutely crazy. So, I mean, I can't even imagine, just the feeling to do that. You said you started training for it, earlier this summer. I mean, to me, that doesn't seem like a whole lot of time to train for that for that hike. Is that like the dentist guy? Like, did he tell you how long he had trained for it, or?
Yeah, he said that he'd been working out in the gym, and he's from Texas. There's not really any big mountains there, not a ton of elevation gain. So he said he would go to this one neighborhood where it was kind of like a big hill, and he would do that, and it was like a 7-mile trip altogether. And he said that he would try to do that a couple times a week. Thankfully, hardcore training, I mean, I love hiking anyway, so it wasn't like it was a big stretch of, I have to hunker down and train. It's fun for me to go hiking. I really enjoy being outdoors and being with my friends and backpacking. So I'm used to carrying tons of equipment on my back. And it wasn't like a hard thing. It was actually a lot of fun to train for it too.
Yeah. That's cool. What are some of your other goals when it comes to hiking?
I definitely want to do Machu Picchu down in Peru. So it's a 4-day hike, and you get to see Machu Picchu for sunrise as well. For some reason, my hiking, a lot of the times it correlates with sunrises. I always try to be on the top of a mountain for sunrise, or I'll try to hike for sunrise before I go to work. Machu Picchu is definitely on the list. Mount Rainier in Washington next summer, and I might even look into McKinley. When I lived on the East Coast, my son and I had started knocking out the 4,000 footers in New Hampshire up in the White Mountains. So got pretty much halfway through that list before we moved out here. It's something eventually I'd like to finish. And then hiking the Appalachian Trail. Yeah. I think that once my kids are out of the house and doing their own thing, that's something that I'm going to do for sure.
So when you're out on the trail, I mean, what is kind of the feeling that you get? We were talking about marathon runners yesterday and how we couldn't relate to that, and they have this sort of runner's high. So do you get a hiker's high when you're out there on the trail?
I guess I do. And it's funny because I made that joke yesterday. I was like, I don't even like to drive 26 miles, let alone run 26 miles, but I have hiked 26 miles in a day before. And so now that I think about it, maybe it's not that much of a stretch to do a marathon. Maybe that's something else I should look forward to. When I'm outdoors, though, everything just kind of settles down for me. I kind of feel like I'm at one with nature. I can relax. I have a pretty high stress job, and just being able to get outdoors and surround myself with the trees and feeling the breeze, a lot of the time that's enough to calm me down and kind of help me center myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing I didn't mention as I was kind of doing your intro is that high stress job that you have.
Yep.
So you are, truly a hero to us as well, being a healthcare worker and a registered nurse. What made you want to get into that field?
So I have two answers to that question. When somebody asks me that question in a job interview, I say, well, I come from a long line of nursing. My grandmother was a nurse, my aunt was a nurse, and we kind of just really love to help people in our family. And if you want to know the real answer, it's I was a single mom with 2 babies, and I went to the local community college and picked up the course catalog, and I looked at the degrees and the earning potential for those degrees, and nursing was the highest, and so I said, that's what I'm going to do. I work in the operating room, and I fell in love with that because in nursing school, there was like an optional day where you could go and watch surgeries if you wanted to for the day. So I signed up to go and do it. And the very first surgery I saw was a toe amputation. And the anesthesiologist put the patient to sleep. They started blasting some rock music. Everybody's kind of joking around. Surgeon comes in, takes a scalpel, just goes right along the base of the toe, pops the toe off the bone. He sticks it on his finger and he wiggles it back and forth for me like this. And I was like, this is the coolest job ever. And this is what I want to do with my life. So that's how I got into the operating room.
Definitely would not have been my reaction at that time.
Yes.
It would have been like, we need to clean up on aisle 2.
Code blue, operating room, not the patient.
Yeah, that definitely would not have. So, I mean, hey, kudos to you. Even we were, talking about it yesterday with Sandy. I mean, that is not my cup of tea. So my hat's off to anybody who can look at that amount of blood at one time and not lose their lunch for sure. So, but no, that's very cool that the reason behind why you chose it really came down to the best way to provide for your kids.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Anything that we missed before I get to my final question that you want to throw out there?
No, I think I think that playing baseball in general for anybody kind of helps set you up for success later on in life. Being able to take direction from a coach, being able to work together in a team, the skills that you learn when you play baseball don't just apply to baseball, they apply to so much more in life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes people a good employee and a good friend and even a good parent. Like I didn't have the greatest parental supports when I was growing up, and a lot of the lessons that I learned from my coaches, I've been able to pass on to not just my kids, but to the kids that I've coached. So
yeah. I've found that as well. And being a game of failure, I mean, let's face it, life is a game of failure.
Yep.
And you got to learn how to, overcome a strikeout, overcome walking a batter, overcome making an error.
Yep.
And that's what life's all about.
Yep.
So I love that when I'm talking to people and that's how they relate to it, because there are so many lessons that can, be taught through the game.
Yep.
And, like I said, the whole teamwork aspect, I mean, everything about it is things that can definitely be correlated into real life without a doubt.
Yeah. And I mean, even when my son would, have a game at the end of every game on our way home, I'd be like, so what were some things that we did that were good that game? And what were some things that you think that we can improve upon? And it's always just being able to look back at the decisions you've made or the things that happened in the game and see what you can do to be better going forward.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so that brings us to my final question, and the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People, Many Little Places," which comes from Michael Franti song, who you actually are a fan of as well. I think you might be
Yes.
one of my very few guests who are like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Saw him in concert just last week.
So the opening lyrics of his song Gloria go, when many little people in many little places do many little things and the whole world changes. So what's one of the little things that Erin does on a daily basis to make the world a little bit better place?
I guess the one thing that I do every day that I think is really important is I try to live as real as I am and to live an honest life. You won't ever catch me lying. Sometimes that works in my favor, sometimes that works against me, because it can be brutally honest, but I just feel like people need to live their real authentic life.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer. And I know I can speak for Sandy as well. I mean, we've thoroughly enjoyed our visit with you. Your hospitality has been second to none. You fed us, you took us on hikes, you showed us around town, and Bend is definitely a place we'll be back to. It's an awesome, awesome little town. And to any of my listeners who have not been to Bend, Oregon, you want to get here. I mean, apart from just having the last Blockbuster, there's so many cool things here. I mean, so anything you want to shout out about Bend, Oregon before we sign off? I mean, like you said,
no, it's terrible. Definitely don't move here. No, if any of your listeners want to come out, definitely get in touch, put them in touch with me, and I will show them the exact same hospitality. I'm very grateful that you and Sandy took time out of your trip to come out here and see me and give me the opportunity to spend some time with you. So
it was a blast. It was a blast. You can kind of be the official, unofficial tour guide of Bend, Oregon. So, no doubt. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out again. And we had a blast. We look forward to getting back here at some point in the next year or so, and hang out some more.
Yeah, it sounds great.
And for those out there listening, be sure to check out my other blogs and podcasts at danclouser.com. Erin, again, thank you so much for everything while we're here.
Thank you.